Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Chicago Corner. This is our Friday night news wrap-up show, and I have some very exciting news for you all. You're finally going to be able to meet the face and the voice behind the Hard Lens moderation and Chicago Corner moderation. I am here to introduce now Mr. E. Heller.
Hello.
Welcome to the program tonight.
I am very happy to be here, and I look forward to the rest of the show and hope that my internet connection holds out long enough.
Well, so far it looks like it's going to be okay. We did a little pre-show test, and I think your upstream with your video should be fine. Since I'm powering the show on my end from StreamYard, it seems that I think your signal's going to StreamYard, and I'm pushing it out. And I've got a strong connection here, but I think we'll be all okay. It's a beautiful weekend. Chicago has reopened. And, well, before we go on talking about that, Ed, I want you to share a little bit about your background with our audience, because a lot of people see you in the live stream, the live chat. And since this is your first opportunity to join us on the air here, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your work with Hard Lens Media?
Okay. How did I find Hard Lens Media? That's a good question. Well, let's start with me. You can find my personal website at edheller.com. And I currently am known as Deep Dish Pizza Enthusiast Edward Heller. And that is because for more than a decade now, I've been trying to teach people how to make deep dish pizza at home. And I have a website for that too. It is called realdeepdish.com. And if anybody wants to check that out after the show, you're more than welcome. But I started here as the social media intern for Bacon for President on Twitter, and he got involved with Hard Lens Media. I'm not really sure how he met them. I'm guessing that one of the guys at the show might have tried to take a bite out of his head. That happens a lot when you have a head made of bacon. So, but once they got that out of their systems, they actually became pretty good allies for helping more Americans bring home the bacon. And now you've got everybody in the live chat yelling about the volcano party because they've had it up to here with the duopoly of doom.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot when I'm co-hosting with Kid over at the Hard Lens Media Show. Well, I thought it would be fantastic to invite Ed onto the show tonight, because when we had a staff meeting, I think a few Sundays ago, we were all there and we got to meet each other. It's the first time I met Ed, and you were contributing to the conversation. I'm like, dude, why haven't you been on the air yet? I think you've got a lot of great opinions, a lot of great insight. Plus, you share a lot of that in the live chat as well. So I just felt I like showing more of the faces behind all the Hard Lens Media shows. So I'm very grateful you were able to join us tonight.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. I'm usually more comfortable behind the scenes, working on the production level of things, but happy to lend a friendly face whenever I can. If you need a little help, I'm here for you. I don't know how much of the chat I'm going to be able to be involved with while I'm on camera, but I'll do my best over here.
Well, I think that the deep dish angle is it's a show of its own. And we were talking pre-show, as I'm always trying to come up with topics for the show. And I knew about your website. I hadn't had a chance to visit it yet, but we're definitely going to dedicate an episode to Ed teaching us about making our own deep dish pizza, because I love deep dish pizza. I never even imagined trying to take on making it at home. But given how expensive it can be, as much as we've got some really great pizza places all over Chicago, it would be kind of cool to try to make it at home. So I think we're definitely going to dedicate an episode to that sometime in the near future.
Very cool. I'm actually very supportive of supporting local business. If you don't feel like you want to go out and get all the ingredients or go through the extra effort to make your own pizza, I very much support ordering from a local business. You know,
Yeah.
there's plenty of great pizza places in the Chicagoland area. They don't just make deep dish. They've got the more popular thin crust or tavern style. And there are a lot of restaurants out there now doing styles from other locations. I've seen Detroit style. I know there's a few places that do the New York folding style that we like to make fun of in the chat. But you know, it's all good, and it's really great to have such a huge variety.
So, growing up in Chicago, what's your earliest pizza memory? What was the first pizza you remember sampling as a kid?
You know, that's a good question. There was this place. I grew up in the suburbs. I live in the city now, but in the suburbs, there were a few places that the family would have as a regular place. One was called Jake's, and I learned in my older years that actually was a franchise. And then everyone knows Rosati's, and then Barnaby's.
That's mine. You just hit it. That's the one.
Barnaby's. My hometown Barnaby's was in Schaumburg. I didn't live in Schaumburg. I lived near Schaumburg. But that's the one that our family went to with the old on TV box in the corner that would show White Sox games. And then you always had to go up to the counter and order your pizza from one place. And if you wanted beer, you go to a different counter. And if you wanted burgers or something from the grill, you go to a third counter. And then every one of those places had like a window where the kids would put their noses up to the window and watch the guys make the pizza.
I remember that fondly. And they're really crunchy crust. It was delicious.
Yeah. Fortunately, there's still some Barnaby's left. The one in Northbrook is very popular with the pizza crowd.
Definitely. Well, let's talk a little bit about our first story today. I was going to run some video. As summer has begun, June 11th, Chicago is now in phase 5 of the coronavirus precautionary. Well, I guess it's not precautions anymore because they've put the mandates in place, what everyone's supposed to do as they've reopened the city. So let's hear from Mayor Lightfoot. I believe this was from earlier today. Let's see if I can get the screen up. There we go. Oh. Let me jump ahead in the video here. Where did she start talking? Stand by, people. Technical difficulties. My buffer is running slow. Where's the mayor? Oh, I know what the problem was.
That's all happening this summer.
I took the whole video and didn't clip it. All right, let me go back just a little bit. Stand by, everybody. Sorry about this. We are usually more prepared and professional, but I was running from the other show.
Luna.
Let's hear what the mayor has to say here. Okay. Is it frozen?
Seems frozen on my end.
Yeah. Darn. Yeah, I was closing all these other windows. There we go. Might just jump ahead and clip some of what she says, but okay, here we go. Is it frozen on your end, Ed?
Yeah, I actually watched some of this earlier. Let me see.
You know what? Since we're having so many problems with the video, let me I can always read the story that that you shared with me from Block Club Chicago. Let me just bring us both back up here. There we are, and put up our proper. All right, so anyway, the mayor came out today. This comes today from Block Club Chicago. Chicago officially reopens 447 days after the corona pandemic changed everything. And this is reported to us by Kelly Bauer of Block Club Chicago. COVID-19 has killed more than 5,400 Chicagoans, but Friday marks a major milestone as capacity restrictions are lifted for businesses and major events can fully return. Chicago and Illinois completely reopened today, 447 days after the stay-at-home order went into effect, changing life and making the pandemic a reality for many. The state has moved into phase 5 of reopening, lifting all capacity restrictions and allowing all businesses to reopen and events to fully return. Masks are still required in some instances and are recommended in public for people who aren't fully vaccinated, but fully vaccinated people are no longer required to wear them in many public settings. I invite all Illinoisans to feel the hope and joy of this moment while also recognizing that this pandemic is still very present for the world at large, not to mention those here at home who've not been or cannot be vaccinated, Governor J.B. Pritzker said in a Thursday news release. As we take this next step forward, let's do so with a renewed commitment to empathy, to community, and to making each day together count. You did it, Illinois. The virus continues to sicken and kill people locally and worldwide, and officials have urged everyone to get vaccinated and to continue taking safety precautions like wearing masks and staying socially distant when appropriate. But Friday's shift, after months of officials gradually easing up on restrictions, marks a major milestone. For the first time in more than a year, Cubs and Sox games can be played with full stadiums. People can host large weddings, festivals are making a comeback, museums have reopened, with some of the most popular ones staying open late Friday in celebration. Businesses are still allowed to have their own coronavirus safety rules, like asking guests to wear masks or show proof of vaccination, but those rules are no longer required under the state. Lightfoot said our city is back. We're poised to roar back to provide more business, more opportunity, and importantly, more jobs to Chicagoans. Lightfoot said Chicagoans endured incredible hardship during the last 15 months, but they showed we're strong, we're resilient, and we're back. Dr. Allison Arwadi, head of the Chicago Department of Public Health, said Chicago will continue to make progress so long as more people get vaccinated. On that note, officials are encouraging people to support local businesses and offering Chicagoans rewards like Lollapalooza passes if they get vaccinated, as less than half of the city's residents have gotten all their shots. You masked up, you got vaxxed up, and now it's time for you to get up, get out of the house this summer, and fully and safely enjoy the events of the best city on the planet, our beloved city of Chicago, Lightfoot said. As we talk about this, I'm going to hope that I can share the screen from the City of Chicago's website where I did have the new mandates in place here. Let's see what ends up happening. Here we go. Reopening Chicago. Let's see if that ends up sharing properly. And action. So this is at the City of Chicago's website. www.chicago.gov. I'm sure that there's probably a link on the front page that guides to this specific information about the reopening of Chicago. And I've filibustered enough sharing the news on the reopening. It's beautiful weather. I know everybody's anxious to get out. But we had spoken a little bit about this off air before the show, Ed, on some of our concerns. What are your thoughts on this mass reopening and crowds being able to gather everywhere and stadiums being opened? And it's a little scary, but we must press it.
It's everybody I think has a little bit of anxiety about getting back into crowds again. I mean, some people just want to get back to what they consider normal, and a lot of people are like, well, I've been vaccinated, and everybody thinks they're invincible once that happens, but you never know. We don't know how events are going to play out overall, but you want to be positive about the situation, and with the small amount of federal assistance that state and local governments have gotten in order for people to properly lock down like they should have been, it's pretty clear that cities like Chicago are eager to get their businesses back up and running on full steam, because they just there wasn't a whole lot else that they could do to keep a lot of businesses open. In fact, a bunch of them ended up closing. Yeah. But the ones that are still functioning are hoping that this phase 5 is going to let them get back to something closer to normal.
Well, you made a very good point. The lack of federal response. Well, there was a federal response, but it was
very insubstantial, right?
Weak. It was a weak federal response, and I think I've talked about this on the show in the past. I think last time we were talking about the reopening, had the federal government done more to pay businesses to stay closed and paid people to stay home, I don't think we would be quite as anxious about reopening now, given the fact that it's almost as if we don't have a choice, because the longer we wait, the longer more businesses go under, the longer more people can't get back to work. I've been vaccinated. I have most of my friends and all my family have been vaccinated, and I am still a little bit nervous going out. I still put my mask on if I go into crowded places. It's not even as much out of a concern for my own welfare, given the fact that I've been vaccinated, but it's almost kind of sending a signal that I respect that if there are others there that are still nervous or that who haven't been vaccinated, it's not a big deal to me to still wear a mask. I think it's better to be cautious than just throw that to the wind.
Yeah, I think that was a good point too. That I noticed that you had, like I said, I watched the event earlier this morning. It was the Commissioner for Business Affairs. What was her name? Rosa Escareno went, and she was like encouraging everybody to get out and go shop and stuff. And I laughed when she said buy jewelry, but she also asked the public to, respect the masking policies of the local businesses. If they're going to still have a sign that says, put a mask on before you go in, just be respectful of the business. Everybody is affected, whether it's financially or psychologically or what have you, by this whole thing. And, if you're just going to exacerbate the situation by just being defiant about the situation, I don't know. I don't see what good that serves in that kind of situation. We're trying to open back up, so let's do it in a way that doesn't, become adversarial for everybody.
Yeah, there's no reason to have attitudes or be adversarial about it.
That said, I can be adversarial about things. I mean, if you talk about politics and it don't make sense to me, I will call you out on it.
Well, that's what we're here for. That's what Hardlands Media, as well as Chicago Corner, is all about when we cover these political stories. But I'm keeping my fingers crossed. As I'm more of a loner, and I tend to stay in anyway. But as I have gotten out a little bit more to go back and forth to the studio and do my shopping, it is nice to feel like I can finally venture out without being paranoid, and know that more places are open so long as people are still a little bit careful about it. I just get nervous about hearing about these other strains that are emerging. I'm a little less nervous about that. I think the what I was more concerned about is that the pharmaceutical companies are going to take advantage of people by pushing the government to make everybody get booster shots in 6 months when they might not have to. Yeah.
And I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. People do your own research on this. You can't always trust that a drug company is going to have your best interest in heart. And so, talk to your personal doctor, do the research, look in the medical journals, see what everybody's saying before you, just leap into the next, oh, well, I guess we're just going to have to get booster shots every 6 months. I predicted that that's what they were going to do. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's going to save us from whatever the next pandemic is.
Yeah.
Without digging too deep into the rabbit hole there.
Yeah, well, with all the other stuff we've seen on a national level, with congressional hearings and the news coming out of, regarding Wuhan and the lab angle and Fauci, deflecting everything now after he was saying different things last year. You don't know who to trust on a level of leadership or authority, where to get your news from. The facts from.
I did find it was kind of getting back onto the whole, the event of the morning's press event. it just it was kind of funny because they were, they had everybody basically, it was get vaccinated and we'll give you prizes kind of
yeah.
Like Lightfoot was saying we're going to give out $250 gift certificates, and and I was like, okay, I mean, I know you want to get businesses back rolling and everything, but I mean, is this really the right way to get it going? I don't know.
It's like a game show.
Yeah, it's
patronize businesses, win big prizes. What's the risk? COVID.
Yeah, I was reading. Some other state was giving out some kind of lottery tickets, and I'm like, come on, man, that's not why you want to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's true.
It's good to see Kit Cabello in the chat. Welcome everybody who's in there. I see Lazy A-Hole Ranch. That's my friend Allie out in Colorado.
There she is.
She sells soap, so if anybody wants some handcrafted American-made soap out of Colorado, you can go to lazyaholeranch.com, and that's a cheap plug from me.
That's okay. We're all about cheap plugs here.
Yeah, well, we gotta help. We gotta help everybody as much as we can. Buy local, buy handcrafted. Support your local businesses, support your friends, network with everybody. Eventually, mutual aid is going to be a phrase a lot of people are going to become familiar with, and I think it's important that we start getting these connections going.
Definitely. So I don't know how many of our viewers are on top of the story that apparently the state lake L-Stop is going to be getting a major facelift. Now let's hope that this video runs, because it's a very good simulation of what to expect as the as that facelift is integrated.
Looks like it's freezing.
It's freezing again. God darn it. God bless America. Man, and that's a shame because it was a really cool animation. All right, so I guess I'm going to have to bring up. Let's see if I can run it off of this image. I wonder if it'll play outside the browser.
You can share it from the browser.
Yeah, maybe we can see a miniaturized version of this. Let's see what happens here. Is that going to run for us? There we go. Let's see if we can go full screen on that.
Cross your fingers, everybody.
I'd like to share the experience. There we go.
Had some good production values on this. I wonder how much the city spent on this video.
It's definitely some high-end CGI for sure, but it looks good.
Okay, increased sidewalks. That's good.
Probably more bike lanes so that traffic is more congested.
ADA elevators. All right, access is good.
I'm behind that.
All right. They're adding some escalators, or they're upgrading them. I don't remember. I haven't been to State and Lake in a while. Flyover bridge. Okay. Yeah, that canopy looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as design goes, I think it's pretty great. But why they're spending what, $180 million for this?
Oh, I'll share what they're spending on it. Let me get rid of that. Finish the video here, the simulation.
So for people who aren't that familiar with downtown Chicago, this is the intersection of State and Lake, and this is the new elevated train station that they're going to be starting on. I think I read it was going to be a 3-year project costing $180 million.
You're right. You're correct. Let's kind of get out of that and discuss that. Let me get rid of that screen.
Now, it's like I said a little earlier, I think that looks pretty cool. That canopy is pretty awesome. I wish the rest of the city had that kind of funding to be able to redo a good portion of the city that way. It just seems like, did they need to really spend 180 million to do this? And could some of that money have gone to other infrastructure projects around the city?
That's what they're proposing. So let me read some of the details on this. Lori Lightfoot, the Chicago Department of Transportation, and the Chicago Transit Authority unveiled the preliminary design concepts for a rebuilt State Lake L station, the latest marquee project in the modernization of the nation's second largest transit agency. The new State Lake CTA station will replace the more than 100-year-old existing structure. 100 years old.
Yeah, most everything in Chicago is 100 years old. The whole city needs an overhaul.
I'm going to be coming at this, though, from a preservationist angle. So I highlight that for some of my comments after this. Fully accessible rail hub with wider platforms and a host of customer and amenities built to 21st century design standards. It includes wide balconies open to the public facing north and south, et cetera, we saw in the video. Given that the State and Lake CTA stations lies within the beating heart of Chicago, we must pave the way for its full modernization and make it easily accessible for all transit riders. I'm all for that, especially accessibility for disabled and seniors. In addition to accessibility, this project also demonstrates our commitment to the full revival of the Loop, which is the economic engine and cultural hub of our great city. I would add there, that seems to be where all of the funding goes. It's from TIF or federal funds that are withheld and paying for other things when they should go to neighborhoods. The current State Lake Station was originally built in 1895 as part of the original Loop Elevated, and in 2019 was the second busiest station on the Loop L with more than 3.7 million annual entries. The station serves 5 of the CTA's 8 rail lines. The new design features a blend of old and new, retaining original design elements such as salvaged posts and railings that frame the vending and customer assistance kiosks, which I'm sure, based on that modern design, will be tossed out the window. The intersection of State and Lake Streets is an iconic location. Agreed. In the heart of Chicago, and it deserves a station that makes a bold statement while meeting the needs of the 21st century transit customer. This is going to cost, as you mentioned, the project has been awarded $11 million in engineering and design funding and $119 million in construction funding through the Federal Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Program. The total estimated project cost is approximately $180 million, and the city of Chicago is seeking additional funding from various potential sources. So this ain't all paid for yet. Okay. Once the design process is complete and full funding is obtained, it will take about 3 years to complete construction of the new station. All right. So I'm very active on social media and Facebook, and this story was posted. Of course, I shot my mouth off because, my comment on social media was, we got money to put this stuff up, but we don't have money to reopen schools. And I got some snarky comments from people that were educating and correcting me on the fact that this was federal money and budgets are specifically allotted to specific things. Well, as we see in this 180 million is not fully covered by what the feds and what it's been awarded. So there's still money that's got to be raised that'll probably come out of TIF funds. But I mentioned this on the show with Kit tonight. We were talking about the bipartisan infrastructure bill that's being rammed through right now by Biden, the Republican light. And I said, when we're looking at our national infrastructure, so much has to be rebuilt, restored. You drive under any CTA overpass in the city, and you look at the pillars, and they're literally held together with duct tape and plates that are bolted into the concrete because they're literally crumbling it. I'm sure you've seen some of these.
Yeah, they're constantly repairing tracks and girders and stuff, and okay.
I've seen entire overpasses replaced in Evanston. Weekend project. They will replace the overpass. They will fix the pillars supporting it, and it's a done deal. Now, where I come from a preservationist angle with what they're proposing here in State Lake, it does look beautiful, and it's very 21st century. And it's also completely like ripping away, I feel, part of the character of that intersection as it relates to the historical tradition and the historical character of that neighborhood.
It's a bit of a vanity project for sure.
Right? Vanity and beautification. And I think accessibility is very important. I don't see how they can't spend the money to make it more accessible, fix it up, but this complete teardown and putting this other monstrosity up when we need funds to cover all of our other infrastructure issues throughout the city. That, okay, Facebook trolls might not be related to money that we take away from schools, but to spend all this money here or on what Rahm Emanuel did with the Belmont flyover to help everybody coming from the North Shore get downtown 5 minutes faster while tearing up areas of the Belmont neighborhood. Hey, Oreo, get down. It just, and also tearing down beautiful historical structures. It just gets my blood boiling because people will argue, well, it's going to cost more money if you've got to replace the pipes and you got to do restoration. I would argue, I think restoration is cheaper. I think that there's a lot of people are going to make a lot of money off this contract, modernizing things while just completely throwing away some of the architectural character of our community.
Yeah, I'm actually wondering how much of the current infrastructure bill that Congress has going on right now is going to include things for projects like this or projects similar to this. Because, I mean, you're looking at, your article said that $119 million was coming from a federal congestion mitigation and air quality program.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, there's a lot of situations in Chicago that could benefit from that kind of funding.
Yep.
Including a number of stories that Heartlands Media has covered regarding, General Iron or the Mad Asphalt plant, those kinds of situations where they could say, well, okay, well, maybe we could put some money into preventing people from getting polluted on from other types of construction, infrastructure or operations, and then of course there's just the general infrastructure of bridges and roads and all kinds of projects that could be taken up by the city instead of the $180 million that they're spending on this. I mean, does it really need to cost $180 million?
Well, I'm sure it does if we're going to grease some palms with who's going to make money on this here in Chicago. Let me pull up. So I was listening to everything you said, but at the same time, as I'm controlling the board here, I was trying to pop up the social media page that I was reading some comments on from Facebook. And all of your points are very well taken, especially where it comes to where that money from that grant can be better spent. But I think you're right. I think a lot of it is a vanity project. Let's see if I can pop this up.
And don't get me wrong, it's really cool looking vanity project.
Yeah.
I wish we had the money to do that for the whole city, where it doesn't become a giant eyesore for the city. But I wish we had the federal funding for modernization that we really need in every city. And it's a shame that Congress thinks that 2 or 3 trillion is too much when it really should be closer to 10 or 15 trillion for that infrastructure bill.
Yeah. People
just don't get it. It's like Congress could basically, they could pay for any kind of national infrastructure repair that they wanted to, and it wouldn't cost you a dime. It's not, federal spending, it's not like they're sending everybody an invoice every month to say, okay, here, pay your share of the infrastructure bill that we just did. They're not doing that for the military budget.
That's true. Oh, I'm having so many computer problems tonight. I wish I could just get this. Oh, here we go. Okay. I got the comments up here. I don't know why this would be sad. All those old stations are disgusting. Why is progress always met with melancholy? There's a reason we update most things, especially infrastructure. It's not sad at all. Those narrow platforms are dangerous and the station is rather dingy. Great looking design. Unfortunately, being Chicago, they'll pay 2 to 3 times what any other location would and drag it out for years. This is a historic site, and I don't agree with turning it into a postmodern extravaganza. Most important to provide for transfer between L and Subway within the paid zone.
Oh, is this your post?
No. These are comments from Facebook amongst
other people are having these opinions. Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm sharing other opinions, and there's a lot of people that are, very excited about this, and an equal amount of people that are looking at the historical context of, tearing what's there down.
Yeah, there are landmark commissions and stuff that go out and say, oh, look, this building really should be restored. It shouldn't be upgraded or anything. And I understand that.
Yeah.
I'm 50-50 on public transit though. So, if it's something that completely redefines how part of the city looks, then, then maybe people in that area need to decide if they think that one thing will be a better benefit than just doing a straight restoration.
This comes from Steven Strauss on Facebook, and I can't find my post, but man, he really reflects what I was saying. They're spending he says 130 million. It's actually 180 million. They're spending 180 million on this. Rebuild the old one and use the money to take care of the homeless that are all over that area. It's a freaking health station, and they're spending that kind of money on just one. Politicians really love raising taxes and throwing money away on stupid projects, to which other people are pointing to, well, this is federally funded, blah, 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 blah. But I guess what it ultimately comes down to is priorities.
Yeah.
The priorities and what really needs attention versus what's going to look pretty and lift everything up so that people are distracted from the shit that's not getting fixed, that is really, really dire and pressing. As this person just talked about, homeless people living in tent cities everywhere, schools being closed. Yeah, separate budgets for separate projects, but, I'm probably coming across as too negative about so many of these things, but there's so many different angles to the stories.
Yeah, I think we need to embrace the fact that we're not always going to be positive about every story. I think it's great when we can find the good parts of the stories in the city and see where things are positive versus always negative. And it's really easy to find the negative, especially these days when there's so much corruption in the city. But we have an effort to redo transit, and they want to try and upgrade it, but 180 million, just does that make sense? I would have to ask somebody if they could do that a little less expensively,
right?
Or wait to do like all the bells and whistles until maybe you can get some more federal funding for that. Because it seems like you would want to prioritize all of the crumbling infrastructure in the city before you focus on one single thing.
You're utterly right. Now, here's one of the not apologists, but defenders, Albert Williams on Facebook. To those predictably whining about the cost of this exciting and long-needed project, please actually read the post before commenting on it if it's not too much trouble. I love his snarky attitude. You'll notice this paragraph. To date, the project has been awarded $11 million in engineering and design funding and $119 million in construction funding through the Federal Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Program, which you mentioned earlier. The total estimated project cost is probably $180 million. In other words, funding is coming from sources that would only fund the capital development projects. Money is not being diverted from other issues. That's the way it works. To which Gene Lakowitz responded, Albert Williams, exactly. I can't take my mortgage money to buy groceries. Neither can the CTA take capital project money and give it to the city for crime prevention programs. It's basic accounting. I'm glad they educated us.
Yeah, but they could take that money and put it into other things that do fall under that category. And there's got to be more than just state and lake.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. I mean, that's the news as it was reported today. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if they're able to get the rest of the money for it. I will remain cautiously optimistic about it. But man, I just hate seeing the characters of so many of our neighborhoods changing with all this modernized stuff and money changing all these things when things can be preserved, things can be restored where it's sorely needed with our other infrastructure. I think you hit all the nails on the head as far as that went.
Yeah, we find very often that in the city, it's the movers and shakers that decide what they want to do.
Pretty much.
And where big money comes from decides where big money goes, and that's part of the Chicago machine that we need to start breaking apart. And hopefully, the city council will make a little more effort in that regard, but may just need to get more people in the city council who are calling this stuff out. You got I mean,
Yeah,
right now,
they've got more important things to do, like renaming Lakeshore Drive.
yeah,
You know?
yeah. I mean, look, I got no problem with naming a bunch of stuff after DeSable. In fact, it'd probably be more appropriate to rename Kinsey after DeSable, considering Kinsey basically took over all of DeSable's stuff after he left town, and so basically they gave the city they give Kinsey a lot more credit than he probably was due, just because DeSable wasn't there to tell him, hey, look, I was the one who did this, and it's just. I'm not a historian, so I'm probably getting half this wrong, but I just thought it was, it's priorities.
Priorities. Yeah. Well, moving on to our next story. This broke today on Block Club Chicago, which I just found ironic, given that we will be doing a follow-up on the foot pursuit policy as put out by the Chicago Police Department. But the Chicago Police Department officer is in the news. This from Block Club Chicago. Right. Chicago cop charged in January 6th insurrection, stormed senator's office in CPD Hoodie. This comes from the feds. Police officers have been charged in connection to the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. Good thing nobody shot him first before asking questions. The officer, Carol Chwiesiuk, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, Chwiesiuk, and if I'm not, I apologize, is accused of breaching a senator's office during the incident. A criminal complaint details the accusations against the officer, saying location data, photos, video, and text show he traveled to Washington, D.C. and entered a senator's office at the Capitol, all while wearing a Chicago Police Department hoodie. Data shows Chwiesiuk left Chicago on January 4th, arrived in D.C. on the 5th, and returned home on the 8th, according to the complaint. Data also shows the officer spent time at the Mayflower Hotel, which also had a reservation under his name, and went near the Capitol building on January 5th, the night before the riot. That's called recon. On January 3rd, a text sent from his phone said, "I'm coming to D.C. to save the nation. I'm fucking up some commies," according to the complaint. At 11:28 a.m., January 6th, text sent from his phone said he was in D.C., knocked out a commie last night, one text said. He sent a photo of himself wearing a hoodie where the Chicago Police Department emblem was visible and texted, There's so many blacks here, I'm actually in disbelief. About 2:58 p.m., January 6th, he sent a photo of himself and then texted, "We inside the Capitol, laugh my FAO." The photo was taken from inside the office of Senator Jeff Merkley, a Democrat from Oregon, according to the complaint. The person texting him said guns were drawn in the chamber once a window was broken, and he replied, "Yeah, I was there." They're
not sending their best.
Right? Culture in our law enforcement. Other photos and videos from the day also appear to show him inside the Capitol, according to the complaint. So what is the Chicago Police Department doing about it? At a Friday news conference, Superintendent David Brown said he's on medical leave.
Medical leave.
Mental health.
Right in the head, baby.
That's exactly. And was off duty when he allegedly participated in the insurrection. Well, God damn it, that makes it all right. Chwiesiuk was relieved of police duties June 2nd when the police department learned of the pending charges, Brown said. The PD will not allow anyone to tarnish our shining star and bend it, twist it, or sully its true meaning. What happened in D.C. on January 6th was an absolute disgrace, Brown said. The fact that Chicago police officer has been charged in the attack on American democracy makes my blood boil, makes me sick to my stomach. Well, it should, along with everything else too many rogue CPD officers pull here in town, not having to leave all the way to go to Washington, D.C. And yes,
if he's not very bright to go there like with a CPD hoodie on. That's just bad decision making, isn't it?
That would speak to
truly bad judgment there.
That would speak to judgment that some of our law enforcement officers use when they have an adrenaline rush running into situations, which we've talked about extensively in the past. Yeah, I mean, look, this one guy is obviously, we would hope, is obviously not representative of the mindset of our Chicago fine Chicago Police Department officers. But yeah, it's like, wow, all the bad judgment. He wears the CPD hoodie. He goes there to begin with. I'm passing it to you. I'm talking too much.
I don't want to get in trouble with things I want to say, but it's what they say about rotten apples, and it's not a good representation of what people who ideally would hope the law enforcement represents. And people have all kinds of opinions on what is going on with the organization in Chicago PD or police departments in general, or whether they are getting massively overfunded while crime continues unabated for the most part.
Can I interject there really quickly? I think most of the federal coronavirus relief went to police overtime last year.
Yeah.
So talking about federal money being wasted, that's another example of priorities.
Yeah, I just, if every defense of funding them is going to be that, well, crime keeps getting worse, and it's like, well, how are you proving that you're needed to be continually funded or getting increase in funding if crime keeps getting worse? It's like you're not showing us that you're making a dent in the problem there. And so maybe we need to take some of these responsibilities off of your hands and relocate that funding to other departments that might help people in social areas, or housing assistance,
education,
or different types of mental health assistance, the types of things that a cop with a gun isn't really going to solve. Without getting too deep into it.
No, you're right. And we go over this all the time. I had Jamal Green on not too long ago, and hopefully he'll be on. I'm trying to schedule to get him on our show next week with the youth center that he's proposed, and how the city instead wants to spend the money putting a boy and girls club on the campus of the Chicago Police and Fire training facility, so they can recruit kids from the Chicago Boy and Girls Club into the CPD and fire department, instead of giving Jamal's group the empty land to build on that they're raising the money for, to provide the kinds of programs and education that kids want to go into whatever field that they want to go into, whether it's coding, whether it's he was saying things like aviation, all kinds of choices, not just, hey, we're giving you this opportunity here and you're close to CPD and Chicago Fire Department. Although I'm not going to say anything bad about the Chicago Fire Department. Those guys, I feel, are heroes. But again, it's the city's misplaced priorities with how they decide to solve problems their own way without listening to what the community wants and where to direct those city dollars, whether they come from the TIF funds or the regular taxpayer dollars. As far as bad judgment in the police department and knuckleheads like this guy, who, you made a very good point. Where's the funding going? If it's not going to reform the police culture, it sure isn't training these guys to exercise better judgment. This comes from Blog Club Chicago. This is my transition, since we're doing two CPD related stories. Police department's vague new foot chase policy doesn't fix glaring problems, activists say. Critics say the policy gives far too much discretion to officers to determine when a foot chase is necessary and will lead to dangerous interactions. It could have been improved if the department had listened to community voices, they added. This comes to us from Justice Lawrence at Block Club Chicago. Activists, attorneys, and others in Bronzeville criticized the police department's new foot chase policy Wednesday, just days before the controversial policy is set to go into effect. Now, the details. The police department announced the policy, which still widely allows police to chase people, in late May. It was developed after the March shootings of 13-year-old Adam Toledo and 22-year-old father Anthony Alvarez, who police shot and killed during chases. And we've seen the video on both of those. Neither perpetrator that the police were pursuing were endangering any of the cops chasing them. Their lives were not in danger. There was no reason for them to fear in their lives when they're shooting people in the back or people that they instruct to raise their hands with no weapons in them. That's my editorializing. Sorry, guys. Mayor Lori Lightfoot said the chases are dangerous to officers, the person being chased, and community members. She said the policy would be changed with input from officers and community members, but the revised policy was quietly announced in late May. It's set to go into effect Friday as officials work on a final plan this fall. Activists at Wednesday's news conference said the policy is vague and not restrictive enough, and community members' concerns weren't listened to in crafting the guidelines. Where have I heard this before? The community is never listened to. The activists, the people on the ground, are never listened to. Nusrat Choudhury, legal director for ACLU Illinois, said there are four main problems with the policy. It does not make clear that foot pursuits are inherently dangerous and deadly. It does not put enough constraints on officer discretion, she said.
Discretion. That's the problem.
Yep.
Right there.
Yep.
They don't know how to use their discretion.
They don't.
It's like either nobody's training them how to do that, or they're being trained to use discretion for a different metric other than preserving the peace or doing what just basic police work.
You know what Jimmy Dore says on his show? He's got family members who were cops. He's got friends that are cops since he's from the South Side, and he always, he says from what he hears from them, a Chicago police officer's job is to get home safely at night.
No,
That's
it isn't.
It's not. That's what he says. That's essentially their mindset. The most important thing is to get home safe at night, regardless of what any other circumstances are, which is why they tend to be so reactionary and exercise the lack of judgment and discretion that we're talking about here, I think.
Yeah, well, see, here's the problem with that kind of mindset is that, if your entire goal is to get home safe at night, don't be a cop.
Agreed.
Get another job.
There are plenty out there.
That's not what being a cop is supposed to be in the eyes of the public.
Well, that's what I think the police unions and the police culture have essentially drilled into officers that are training. And we've even seen this in some training videos. I forgot. There's this one notorious trainer, and his video was on YouTube where he was telling cops of the rush that comes from perhaps having to kill, but the most important thing is your own safety. I got to find that video.
Well, you brought up the fire department a little earlier.
Yeah.
Would a fireman say, "Oh, my number one job is to get home alive"? No, my number one job is to put out fires.
I have shared the meme on the Hardlands Media page, and I may have also shared it on our Twitter page. But it's a beautiful. It just says everything. It's a picture of a police officer and a fireman. And the text that goes along with it says, both of these men knew the dangers of their jobs. Only one claims that they fear for their lives going into the situation, which is essentially saying what you just said. Firemen, firewomen, they don't defer their responsibilities because they fear for their lives. As cops know the dangers of their job, but they fear for their lives. Then go get another job.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong here. You get into these jobs and you're like, okay, I want to be a cop. I want to help people. I want to be a fireman. I want to help people. You want to get home alive, of course. But your first priority in those jobs is to help other people. To
serve and protect. It's look. I've always
it shouldn't just be a slogan on the side of your vehicle.
Yes. Agreed. Did you see that? I think it was last week's show we were reporting on this hothead cop, the one who shot Alvarez. He got involved in a road rage incident. He was honking at some guy. Then he gets out of his car with his gun drawn. Everybody in the neighborhood in their other cars, they pull out their video phones to capture what's going on. Hotheads, adrenaline rushes. I've got a gun. I'm above you. I'm not here to serve and protect. What I do is most important. I think that. Ed, people think, oh, you hate cops. I don't hate cops. At one point in my life, before I lost my leg, I thought it would be very, very, it would be a privilege to pursue law enforcement on a detective aspect because I'm the type of person who likes to help people. And I always thought that police work was a sacred duty. And if you could help people, you know, and make a difference, so much the better. So I don't hate cops when I talk about this stuff. It just disappoints and disgusts me when so many people have gotten into this line of work that aren't honoring the job and honoring. I know it's a complicated job. I know there's a lot of gray area. But when we hear stories of this knucklehead who's representative of the Chicago Police Department going to Washington, D.C., right, exercising that kind of lack of judgment, this cop who got out of his car during the road rage incident, so many other endless stories. It's like Kit says, you got one piece of rotten fruit and it makes all the fruit around it rotten because everybody's covering for that. You've got that the thin blue line of silence where instead of reporting and turning over on the bad cops, everyone's protecting each other because it's a fraternity.
Yeah, it's
law enforcement's not a
systematic problem that you know, I don't know how it's going to get solved, but it definitely, sunlight is definitely a part of the situation, the solution. You know, you gotta. It was pretty apparent back when all the Black Lives Matter protests were happening, and people were posting live videos of brutality against protesters from police departments. And that's not what you guys should be doing.
No.
You should be protecting their free speech rights. Why are you beating them up? Why are you calling curfews and declaring unlawful protests to people who are trying to preserve the rights of African Americans, of the right to protest?
An officer should be there to de-escalate, not escalate. And
I agree.
I recall one video that came out of Minnesota during the riots last year with the George Floyd murder. I don't remember if it was Minneapolis. I think it may have been Minneapolis, but I might be wrong. But I know it was in Minnesota, where a police captain came out and addressed the crowd, and he completely de-escalated the situation. He knew they were furious. He knew they wanted blood, and he talked to them, not down to them, not at them, understood their grievances, said, I'm with you. We have to do better. And it de-escalated the situation. And that's the kind of discretion and judgment we need to see from more officers. As this article continues, talking about discretion, it allows officers to chase down and use force against people who've committed incredibly minor offenses, and allows officers to rely on their discretion. And it fails to control for the fact that pursuit is a tactic where adrenaline is running high, and we know from the data that officers are proportionally using lethal force, and remedies for that problem are just not in that policy, she said. The changed policy bans pursuits for minor traffic offenses and all Class A misdemeanors unless the person poses an obvious threat to the community or any person, according to the police department. Officers must also activate their body-worn cameras during chases, which we've seen many of them do, which has helped, you know, pull the screen away from what's going on. But then you've also got the officers who think it's cute to cover their body cams or turn them off. The policy also advises officers to seek alternative ways to detain people, including using technology like cameras and helicopters to track people. That's not too freaky. Chases should be stopped if the officer thinks they wouldn't be able to control the person they're chasing if they confronted them, according to the policy. The full policy can be read online. So, you know, we'll see how that implementation goes.
Again, it's just, because it's up to their discretion, I don't see how we're going to see a reduction in foot chases unless it gets a lot of news coverage, and if the actual local news pushes back on the situation. Because if they just say, oh well, this just happened and I guess we'll move on to the other story now, nothing's going to change.
For so many members of this community, we're not treated like we're people. We're treated like we're subjects. We're treated like we're guilty before we're going to trial, one activist said. She has family members who are in law enforcement, so she understands the need to protect the safety of officers. I think we all do. We don't want our officers in danger. But, my parents were more afraid for my life when I left the house than I was for them, she said. Everyone talks about the community doesn't trust the police, but the police don't trust the community. And that's a huge part of the problem, Gottlieb said. We don't want ill will towards them. We want the system to work better.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement.
Yeah.
It's if you're going to be in law enforcement, work with the community. Don't treat them as an adversary. Find ways to bridge that gap without just doing a press conference where you're pretending you want to bridge that gap but don't.
Yeah.
And that's about as deep as I really want to get on
I'm
that kind of
brother.
stuff,
I'm
because
with
I
you.
don't like ragging on the CPD.
I don't either. But we have to talk about it, though. That's the thing. It's like you can't ignore it.
Yeah. So I guess that's all there is to it from me.
That's all we got. So I don't know if you saw I think maybe you saw our Tuesday show where I was talking with Jose about Exelon.
Yes,
And
I watched a good portion of that.
So some news came out today from Block Club Chicago, utility and energy provided, which I think is great news given the corruption and the scandal we covered with the legislators downstate, I think, being held hostage by Exelon and ComEd and all these taxpayer subsidies they've wanted after being clearly guilty of bribing our elected officials to get what they want. Chicago can choose an energy provider for the first time in 30 years, and it might not be ComEd. The city could pick a new energy provider now that its 1992 deal with ComEd is set to expire. This is from Justin Lawrence. This might be our feel-good story that we might be able to unplug ComEd. Officials sought to strengthen the city's hand amid negotiations with Commonwealth Edison, or a new company, on the first franchise agreement to provide electricity to the city in nearly 30 years during a committee hearing on Thursday. The city is set to ink a new agreement with the utility company for the first time since 1992 and has ratcheted up pressure on ComEd to meet its terms, including issuing a request for information in April soliciting preliminary proposals from competitors. Mayor Lightfoot will also require any franchises to sign on to an energy and equity agreement that considers environmental concerns and the burden of energy costs in certain communities. All right, I'll give Mayor Lightfoot credit where it's due, if she actually follows through on it. David Reynolds, the commissioner of the Department of Assets and Information Services, which oversees the city's contract with the utility company, told the committee the city has received a number of responses to the request for information and expects to receive solid proposals we'll have to consider. But Reynolds gave few details about the response from ComEd's competitors. The city won't begin to review them until after the July 30th submission deadline. The review could lead to an official solicitation of proposals that would further ramp up the pressure on ComEd to seal the deal. Reynolds said the city expects to have a deal ready for city council's approval by the end of the year. Now, I don't know how many Chicago residents know this, but if you poke around, you might be able, even though ComEd delivers your energy, you can possibly get a better deal on your rates through utility providers out of state that just use ComEd's delivery lines. I did this several years ago because ComEd completely screwed me. When I was living in another building, I was a tenant, and I couldn't understand why the hell my electricity bill was as high as it was every month. And I found out that there were only 2 meters in the building, one for the first floor, one for the second floor, while the building owner's father was living in the basement tied into my meter.
Huh.
And I brought this to ComEd's attention, and they said, it's between you and your landlord. We're not refunding you all the money you've overpaid. And I took it to CUB. I took it everywhere. Eventually, that landlord ended up selling it was ridiculous the amount of money I'd overpaid ComEd that they should have given back. After that, I'm like, screw them. I did some research and I found another. I figured, okay, if I'm going to have to pay ComEd to deliver it, I'm sure as hell not going to give them all of my money to actually pay them for the electricity being delivered. So it is possible to find deals with other providers while ComEd actually delivers it. But
but you also need to be really careful who you're getting to do that type of billing service. If you've lived in the city any number of years, you'll find there are people who will go from building to building trying to get you to switch over to them.
Yeah.
And they start you off with some sweetheart deal that seems like you're saving a ton of money, and then all of a sudden, months or a year down the road, the rates reset and you're paying more than you would have paid through the city's deal with ComEd. Some people aren't aware that the city of Chicago makes a deal for the entire city unless you opt out and choose another person to do your servicing for your for your electric. So it's if the city can stay on ComEd to provide reasonable rates and to have somebody actually monitor, how that stuff is being determined, how those amounts and the rates are being determined, it can be a decent deal for a city to do, a deal for the entire city on electric. And so hopefully Lightfoot and the city council will figure something out for that. But there are activists out there. I was trying to get in touch with a group called Democratize ComEd, where what they want to do is basically, how people want to get municipal utilities like broadband or electric. This would take, I think, Democratize ComEd. They take it like one step further with the democratization of the system. I'm not exact. They have a website. Let's see if I can find it here. Is it called? I think it's just called demcomed.org, and they explain the difference between democratization and just straight municipalization. But they have what they have on here. Let's see if I can find it here. They have a number of articles on their website where they talk about the rate structures and what the demands of an electric provider would be, and they've been trying to get the city to go along with these demands. Let's see, it's here. Democratization, I'll read it for you. It says, is the act of bringing something, an entity, institution, program, etc., under democratic control. By democratic control, we mean under the control of an elected official or body that is accountable to the broader public. So in this case, it's kind of that way with ComEd right now, except ComEd is a private company. It's a public utility, but it's a private company.
Right.
They want to acquire ComEd for the city or the state, depending on which government does it, and establish it as a municipal utility. And I think that would probably work better out for us in the long run, at least for the consumer. How much it would cost for the city to do the maintenance and the servicing that ComEd does, I couldn't tell you. But I would imagine they'd have a transition where they would basically just keep on all the engineers and people involved with operating the system as it is now.
Yeah.
And then work from there.
Well, I have to say, when I did switch my providers, I was very happy with the service. I think I had it 2 or 3 years, and there was some kind of a hiccup where it got discontinued, and then it reverted to ComEd, and I was pissed because I'm just like, God damn it, I don't want to give ComEd any more of my money. But, since then, I live in my own building. I know that nobody's got me wired into their relatives' electric that I'm paying for in a basement. So this article went on to say, finishing up what the city reported, negotiations with ComEd have been put on hold until the status of an energy bill in Springfield is resolved, which is what we were talking about Tuesday with Jose. Reynolds said the solicitation to competitors was made in part to answer the question, is ComEd the only game in town? To see if there was another either energy company or team that would include an investor in an energy company that may come in and take over the operation of the system, to what you stated. Lightfoot expects ComEd shareholders to foot the bill for any concessions the company makes in the energy and equity agreement, he told the committee. We don't want to do is have a program that ComEd implements for the city that just gets passed on to the ratepayers. We're looking for them to reach into some of that profit and invest that profit from the shareholder side into either energy efficiency or helping to reduce the energy burden of disadvantaged populations, he said. Hear, hear. Let's hope that that's something that is not just that it is demonstrated with action and not just words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was trying to remember. I saw an article where they were someone was criticizing their energy policy at ComEd. Where they're saying, like, you guys you're only using like 1% of solar,
Yeah.
1% wind. No, it was 3% wind, 1% solar, and then it was 1% of hydroelectric. And I'm like, we're in the Windy City.
Yep.
And you guys can't make
Figure it out.
more money, or you can't generate electricity from wind. We have the abundant Lake Michigan where they could have installed any number of wave generating systems or electrical systems like hydroelectric power or something like that. How is ComEd not investing in this stuff? And
Because
why do they keep asking the state for money to do it when they're making record profits?
Because the shareholders come first. It's socialism for the corporations and rugged individualism for the rest of us. Everything you just stated is exactly what they should be doing, but they don't. And then they bribe federal officials to get what they want. To bring everybody up to speed with that, last summer the company paid a $200 million fine. No wonder their rates are going up. They have to recover the fine that they paid. And admitted its officials bribed public officials. The admission was part of an agreement to defer prosecution amid a wide-ranging corruption scandal centered on former House Speaker Michael Madigan, which took him out, that has resulted in an indictment of several of his close associates. That corruption probe put a different spin on the ongoing negotiations between the city and ComEd, Reynolds said, due to Lightfoot's concern on the company's ethical standards. Now, I guess it needed that sunlight to get it on the radar, even though I think everybody's questioned ComEd's ethical standards for decades. David Glockner, the compliance officer at ComEd's parent company, Exelon, said the company has beefed up its ethics policy since then. But despite a robust compliance process, he conceded ComEd didn't have the level of detail and the guidance and oversight that clearly we needed when dealing with public officials. On and on and on. Well, I think the good side of this is that it does seem the city's taking it seriously, the possibility of getting ComEd to shape up or ship the fuck out, given everything we've learned of their bribery and the rate hikes and not putting any investment into creating alternative sources of energy that are much less impactful on the environment.
Yeah, and it's not like they don't have the locations for doing like installations for solar and that kind of stuff. And I know people do get some kind of discount from the state for installing solar in their buildings.
Yeah,
and you're basically but you're doing that. You're selling that electricity back to ComEd.
Yeah,
you're not. I mean, you're doing something to save yourself money, but you're basically creating infrastructure for them because they don't want to pay for it.
That's exactly what it is. They give you discounts and deals, but then ultimately you still have to put some of the stuff up front.
Yeah, you would think that the state would just say, "Look, here's what you're going to do. You're ComEd. You're our electricity, our public utility. You're going to install solar panels in the places where you can on your own property." And then you're going to offer free solar panels to every business and building that wants it in the state and city. Why aren't they doing that? Instead, they go to Springfield and they ask for money.
You need to be working for ComEd, Ed. ComEd. They
want to hire me. I'll take the right ideas. Salary.
Absolutely.
I'll turn that company around.
Well, listen, we're kind of nearing the end of our broadcast. We're at 1 hour and 15, and I want to thank the 5 viewers that are left with us. I wasn't able to integrate as much of the live chat because I was dealing with issues with my browser and trying to share the screen. I think everybody who's been participating in live chats been chatting back and forth, which is good.
Yeah, let's see who was in the live chat today. We had Kid in there with 4 alligators. My friend Allie over at Lazy A-Hole Ranch in Colorado joined us.
Jim Crane.
Yeah, I see Jim. See Norman's a regular HLM viewer, so welcome Norman. Proletariat came into the chat with a peace sign and a gold heart. What else? Let's see. We had a number of conversations in here.
I'd pop up
Yeah.
one of them, but they're regarding topics that we already passed up on.
That's okay. Yeah, we had Allie talked about there being bad apples everywhere, but she feels like there needs to be some changes to hiring standards. I agree. Yeah. And the problem we have is that I don't know what the hiring standards are and who's making that determination, but whoever is needs to go back to the drawing board and start over.
Agreed, Allie.
See, she also says DuPage County. Allie used to live in Illinois. DuPage County used to have community resource centers. She says. I think that was we were talking about redirecting the funding of the police department to other areas. Yes, I remember in my youth us having community resource centers as well. I don't know how many of them still exist in different cities and neighborhoods. But I would imagine a lot of the funding is dried up for them in favor of police departments, and I wish we would stop doing that.
Yeah. She's got some good points. Well, anything else you want to share with us before we wrap up our Friday night broadcast and enjoy our first night going into the weekend?
Well, let's see. I will share a few pizza tidbits with you.
Okay.
A lot of people think, oh, there's just 2 types of Chicago pizza. No, there are 4. You're going to go, 4? What are you talking about? Well, everybody knows deep dish, okay? But a lot of people, especially outside of Chicago, and some of them inside Chicago, think that stuffed pizza is deep dish. It is not.
Oh, no. 2 different things.
Stuffed pizza has 2 crusts. There's a top crust, which is covered by sauce, which is why a lot of people don't realize there is actually a top crust to that pizza. And then you have the traditional deep dish, which is just the bottom crust, and there's the sauce on top.
Let me ask you a quick question, though, because I know that Lou Malnati's is deep dish.
Yes.
Giordano's is stuffed, but I've never they call it stuffed, but I've never noticed that top crust you're talking about in a Giordano stuffed pizza.
Yes, and like I said, the reason for that is because it's the thinner top crust.
Okay.
And they cover it in red sauce when they bake it. So you don't even realize it's there unless you know it's there.
Okay.
Half the time, because they stuff that stuff so full of cheese.
Yes.
That you're not even paying attention to that top crust.
Melts in your mouth.
And that's when you see those videos with the cheese pulls where the people go and stand up on the tables and they take that slice and pull it like 3 feet above their head. That's stuffed pizza.
Okay.
It's got a ton of cheese in it.
You're making me hungry.
Regular deep dish, not quite as much cheese, and you can probably still get that cheese stretch, but you're not getting 3 feet in the air with that thing. So those are the 2. Those are 2 out of the 4, and so stuffed, which you could call stuffed deep dish, but it's really, you got about 40 years between the invention of those 2 things. Deep dish was 1943, stuffed pizza was 1971, and then you've got tavern style, or which the locals just call thin crust, And a lot of places in the Midwest have this style or something similar, where basically it's just thin crust pizza cut into squares.
Yeah.
And if you made a New York style pizza and cut it into squares, people would go, oh, well, that's just Chicago style. Well, they're not that far off. New Yorkers and Chicagoans will both be angry at me for saying this. New York pizzas are probably more tossed than they are rolled out like the Chicago ones do. In Chicago, they use these sheet rollers, to roll the dough out really, really thin. And they're baked a little longer at a lower temperature in Chicago. So you're going to get that cracker style crispy crust that people like in Chicago. And of course, in Chicago, you've got Chicago had the stockyards, so it's a big meat town. That's why Italian sausage is pretty much the king here on your pizzas.
Pretty much.
So that's 3. Okay, you got deep dish, you got stuffed, you got thin crust,
Thin.
tavern style, which a lot of people call it. The third style.
Fourth, because you just went through.
You're right. Fourth style. Sorry.
I'm keeping track, man. I'm paying attention.
Thank you, Jerry. Fourth style is what I call modern deep dish but it was technically invented in 71 as well. It is a pan pizza, which is kind of like a hybrid between a Detroit style or a Sicilian style and a deep dish. And the guy who invented it, his name was Bert Katz. And he had a number of pizza restaurants over the years, but the one you're more familiar with him would be Pequod's.
Oh, I've heard of they're up North Shore. My mom always orders from Pequod.
The first one was in Morton Grove, Illinois, but then they opened, when Bert Katz sold the place, they opened a second location in Chicago, not far from DePaul University. So being near a college town, it became popular and a word of mouth kind of destination. So now everybody and their sister is making caramelized crusts on the outside. And it's that cheese or the sauce that bakes down into the cheese on that outer edge that bakes up like brown, sometimes black. And you either love that style or you hate that style. But it's very popular in the city. Some of the people from out of town, especially the ones who have food shows on the food networks, they've discovered the style and they're big fans. So that's the fourth style. I call it the quad. You actually have a working recipe at realdeepdish.com if you want to try to make that style. I think it's an intermediate level style. So go ahead and try to make it, but open all your windows, use proper ventilation, because that caramelized crust is going to give off some smoke. So, you want to just do a beginner level stuff, go with the standard deep dish recipe first and see how far you go.
And your website again?
realdeepdish.com. And it's all the recipes are free. All the information's free. If you want to interact with me or talk about the recipes and stuff, you can either comment on the website on different posts, or you can go on Facebook to the Real Deep Dish Facebook page, where I'm very often testing out either a revision to one of the recipes or just making pizza that weekend and decide to post some pictures and let you know what kind of ingredients I used, how long I let the dough ferment, whether I had some special ingredients this time around. And you can feel free to post your own pictures of your efforts there too. It's real easy to make deep dish at home. You just have to have a decent recipe. And avoid the cornmeal if you're looking anywhere other than my website. If you find a website with a deep dish pizza recipe and it mentions cornmeal in the recipe, run far, far away.
What could you substitute if you see that, or does it matter?
The point being is that the original recipe for deep dish pizza never had cornmeal in it.
Okay.
People like to think it did because Gino's East has a crust that's very yellow, but Lou Malnati's doesn't have that. Pizzeria Uno, the original one, doesn't have that. And it's, they're like, what makes it yellow? It's food coloring, guys. It's not a big deal.
Another great tavern style pizza is Marie's over on Lawrence, not too far.
Yes.
From the studio.
Yes, I've been to Marie's before the Rona.
Yeah.
You know
Nadine? Do you know the owner and hostess?
I don't know them, but I have been there with family to sit down, and they're very, very, very thin crust at Marie's.
Yeah.
If you're looking for cracker crust, that's definitely it. Not just cracker thin, but also cracker crisp at Marie's.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great locations around the city that make great thin crust pizza. Marie's is just one of them. You've got, everybody talks about Vito and Nick's on the south side. I've had that pizza years ago brought to the office that I used to work at, and it was fantastic. And they have, I don't know if they originated it, but have you ever had the Italian beef and giardiniera on a thin crust pizza?
No.
It's incredible. And I don't normally I would just say just go and get an Italian beef if you want an Italian beef. But this thing is great. You know, it's a really good combination.
I forgot the name of the place, but it's down on it's down near North Avenue. It's a small place, but it's like an upside down. They have the pizza inside.
Oh, you're thinking of Chicago Pizza and Oven Grinder. I would the Pizza Pot Pie is what
that's the one. Yeah, that's another one.
That I would call an unofficial fifth style.
Okay.
Only because
it's a deviation.
I just started noticing other restaurants are making it too. It's not just Chicago Pizza and Oven Grinder making that anymore. And for people unfamiliar with that, what they do is they've got a ceramic bowl and they're filling it with some type of ragu pizza style sauce. They're covering the entire thing with dough like a mushroom cap, and they bake the whole thing in an oven.
Yeah.
And then they turn it out upside down onto your plate, and then they pull the bowl out, and it's basically when people say, oh, well, deep dish is just like soup. No, pizza pot pie is like soup. That's closer to what you're thinking of, guys, when you go and make fun and poke fun at Chicago pizza. You've got this basic bowl of dough that is filled with cheese and sauce, and it's delicious. Don't get me wrong, but nothing can beat a really well-made deep dish pizza.
Well, after we end the show, I'm going to make sure to add your website to the description here on YouTube. I don't have it in the original show notes there, but I'll add the link there so people can find it. And I'm going to have to spend some time on your website, Ed, because the only kind of pizza I know how to make is pita pizzas, pita bread with sauce and some mozzarella. Sometimes I'll put some black olives and some mushrooms or maybe some little sausages on it. But I got to get better at this, being that I love pizza. But
that's good stuff too.
It is for a quick snack. I mean, you can turn it around really fast, and it's pretty compact and it's tasty. But your stuff is at a whole other level that I definitely want to explore.
Yeah, it really isn't that hard. Get the recipe. There's not a ton of ingredients. Buy the ingredients you like to use. Follow the recipe the first time around. You want to mess around with it.
Allie, I agree with you. Now I'm going to go out to Chicago's Pizza and grab some slices, probably.
Yeah, I actually was thinking about ordering a pizza today, but I haven't done it yet.
So much for my diet.
Support local business, everybody.
Yeah. Well, listen, Ed, I hope to have you. I don't hope. I expect to have you back in the future. You're a tremendously fantastic co-host. I love our back and forth on the stories we're talking about, and we're definitely going to commit an episode to pizza. Yeah, I guess that's just wrapping it up. I hope everybody has a good weekend as the city reopens, and please like and subscribe, blah, 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 blah. Like and subscribe to the page, share it with your friends. If you've got story ideas, share it on our Facebook, our Twitter. It's all in the description below. And remember, if it's happening on the streets, we'll be reporting on it here on Chicago Corner. Have a safe weekend, everybody. And Ed, thanks again for joining me tonight.